round. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sampaio. So, the third speaker that we have is Dr. Theresa Mundita S, Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. She'll be presenting her work on advancing Asian cooperation in biodiversity conservation. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Theresa Lim. Dr. Theresa, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rapi. Okay, so from the micro level, let me go to the very, very macro level, which is the opportunities for cooperation, not just across sectors, but at the ASEAN region, and also briefly the framework in the global community. And I was, our previous speaker talked about the Nagoya Protocol as one of those framework, and I will touch briefly on the Mother Convention, which is the Convention of Biological Diversity. Okay. All right, so for the past 2 days, we've heard how rich our biodiversity is and the economic dependency that we have on our rich biodiversity. This is the status in the ASEAN region. As you know, Thailand is part of the ASEAN. There are 10 countries in the ASEAN region. We have, we have Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, Singapore, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam. Did I miss one? So anyway, there are 10 of us in the region, and of course, 10 countries. We have 30% of the coral reefs in the entire world. 42% of mangrove forests are found in the ASEAN region, and 33% of seagrass beds are also in the ASEAN region. And we've heard about seagrass earlier in one of the presentations. Okay, we have more than 200 protected areas in the region. These are rich areas of high biodiversity. And we are also very rich in species. More than 25% of all known plants and animals can be found in our region of ASEAN. So there's a lot of potential for economic development. And yet we have not truly harnessed this richness. And that's something that we can probably learn from each other as we scale up some of the benefits that we have and some of the learnings that we have in each of the ASEAN member states. Right, so we're really known to be high in biodiversity as a region. There are 3 countries that are mega biodiverse. The Indo-Burma region is known, very known region for its biodiversity wealth. Thailand is part of that. There's Heart of Borneo, even urban biodiversity. Singapore has been leading in the world for richness in the cities, on urban biodiversity. And then for marine, we also have countries that are part of the Coral Triangle area, which is an area that is, that has more than 600 species of corals. That's richer than the Great Barrier Reef. So, all right. So, as a region, it shows how connected we are. As with the richness, with the wealth, some species, genetic resources are related in our region, but the threats are also common. We have, and then some are even transboundary in nature. Illegal wildlife trade, for example, is something that's transboundary. It's something that we need to address as a region. It goes beyond our national jurisdiction. One of these photos, that I have here, is the scaly anteater or the pangolin. One very big confiscation that we had a few years ago. When we did the genetic study, it turned out, because this was caught, confiscated in the Philippines, but when we did the genetic study, it turned out that the pangolins came from different areas in Southeast Asia, not just from the Philippines. And of course, another threat that is transboundary is the marine debris. As you know, the trash moves around, and sometimes if you go to one isolated island, if you pick up the trash, it's not just from the island or from nearby islands, but somehow it's from different areas in the region. Okay, so to address some of these common problems, we have the ASEAN member states are parties to several multilateral environmental agreements. Okay. And we have been, some of these are, allow the ASEAN member states to cooperate with each other, to collaborate with each other, and also across the region as well with other countries outside ASEAN. Okay. Some of the multilateral environmental agreements that the ASEAN member states attend and which the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity support would be, of course, the Convention on Biological Diversity, of which the Nagoya Protocol, I could talk more about the Nagoya Protocol, but it would take more time. So maybe outside the meeting we can discuss this. But the CBD has two protocols, the Nagoya Protocol and the Biosafety Protocol, the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. Okay, and then we have the Ramsar Convention, which is the Convention on wetlands, on important wetlands, and the CITES, which is the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna, and the Migratory Species Convention. So not all of this, in the CBD, all of the 10 countries are parties, but in the others, we only have a few ASEAN member states who are parties to these conventions. Okay, CITES, I think all the 10 countries are also parties to the CITES. Okay, recently, although all the 10 member states are also parties to the UN Convention on UN Forum on Climate Change. Okay. And recently, the ACB has just received accreditation as an international governmental organization observer. And so we had the opportunity to interact with member states and, of course, ask what kind of support they need eventually to be able to implement the commitments under the UNFCCC. But of course, our focus is on nature-based solutions and the synergy between biodiversity and climate change. Right, so we go back to the Convention on Biological Diversity. In December of last year, the Conference of the Parties adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It's the post-2020 GBF. It sets targets that the global community needs to meet by 2030. So it takes off from the Nagoya, from the Aichi biodiversity targets for 2010. So now we have the KMGBF, or the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Some of the targets, or most of the targets, are not cannot be addressed by those who are working within the biodiversity sector. Actually, most of the threats or most of the targets need to be met in cooperation with other sectors, particularly the economic sector. Okay. So there are 4 goals under the KMGBF, and there are 23 targets. I don't need to enumerate this, but you can refer to the KMGBF if you want to know more about it. But it's something that the 10 member states feel very strongly about and have already identified some priority targets that that can be achieved only through cooperation among the 10 member states. Right, so this again is still on the KMGBF. There are targets that reduce threats to biodiversity. There are targets that pertain to meeting people's needs. So that's ecosystem services that is provided by biodiversity, which is something that we are discussing in this conference. And how? How do we meet these targets? These are the tools and solutions for implementing and mainstreaming. So mainstreaming is one of the more important approaches on how we will be able to meet the targets. Of course, the number one always, especially for ASEAN member states, is the provision of financial resources and across different sources. All right, so from the global cooperation that requires from the global framework that requires cooperation and collaboration, we have regional frameworks as well. So after the COVID pandemic, the ASEAN leaders adopted the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. It's our, it's like a blueprint, it's our pathway towards recovering from the pandemic. And what is interesting about this framework is it mentions nature-based solutions as one of the approaches. Under Broad Strategy 5, so it does, it mentions key sector segments. It puts emphasis on collaboration. Again, so it mentions whole of community approach. And then, how do I go back? Right, and as I mentioned, then one of the key strategies is under Broad Strategy 5 is sustainability. And that includes nature-based solution, biodiversity, as part of a sustainability plan for recovery. There's also this regional comprehensive economic partnership. So maybe, all the ASEAN member states signed on to this. It's supposed to promote economic development among the 10 ASEAN member states. But there's Article 17.10, which reminds everyone that even as we pursue economic development in the region, we need to affirm our responsibilities under the CBD, of course, which includes protection. Of course, that means as we develop economically, we need to take into account the biodiversity that we have as well, which is also a source of wealth. Right, so there are other framework. We have the Chiang Mai Statement on Illegal Wildlife Trade, which puts importance, as I mentioned, one of the threats that I mentioned earlier on biodiversity is, illegal wildlife trade, and that is recognizing the importance of that. We have the Chiang Mai Statement on Illegal Wildlife Trade. So this is also something that we need to pursue, cooperate with each other in the region to be able to address our common problem of depletion of our wildlife due to illegal trade. Okay, we also have again, one of the threats I mentioned is marine debris, and so we have the Bangkok Declaration on combating marine debris. But these are all just, on paper. This is something that our leaders already agreed on. But I think it is our job to be able to implement this and, achieve the objectives of all these frameworks. So these are already available. There's political will. Now it's our turn to implement it. There's recently, just last year, under the chairpersonship of Indonesia, the ASEAN Action Plan for Invasive Alien Species, or the IAS management, was also adopted at the 43rd Summit. So again, this is something, a framework, a basis for us to cooperate and address a common issue. So the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is a center as established by all the ASEAN member states to support, to facilitate biodiversity conservation actions in the 10 ASEAN member states, and to facilitate also partnership with ASEAN dialogue and development partners. so that all our initiatives can also be, so that we can collaborate with other institutions as well, even outside the ASEAN. So these are some of our priority programs. One of our flagship projects, which is meeting the target on protected areas in the Kunming, Montreal, and of course, if you've heard about the 30%, 30 by 30 target, meeting 30% of protection of our marine and terrestrial areas. We have ASEAN Heritage Parks, which is a recognition of the best, the ASEAN protected areas in, the protected areas that are very important for the ASEAN to work together so that we can all benefit from the protection of these parks. And congratulations to Thailand, because recently the most recent ASEAN Heritage Parks that were established is the Phu Kiao Nam Nao National Park and the Phu Kradeng National Park here in Thailand. And when the Secretary General of ASEAN went to the Philippines recently, he awarded, because we could not invite some representative here from Thailand, but the ambassador of Thailand to the Philippines, Excellency Tun Traisorat, was there to receive the award on behalf of Thailand. Okay, we also have the ASEAN Green Initiative. So we have protection, and then we have restoration. So the ASEAN Green Initiative allows us to recognize the best reforestation initiatives in the ASEAN and encourage planting of native species of trees all over the region. Okay? And this has also been recognized by the ASEAN Climate Change Report as one of those that can contribute to addressing climate change in the ASEAN and also in the world. Okay, we have biodiversity-based products. We have projects on biodiversity-based products. And of course, this is also being done by BEDO, and is actually another point of cooperation and collaboration among the different countries in ASEAN. Share best practices, and also, it can provide us an opportunity to have a forum later on, just to talk about this biodiversity-based products and its contribution to economic development and to the betterment of the ASEAN community as a whole. Okay, so these are some of the initiatives that we have supported, and we look forward to expanding this initiative together with the PEDO. We also have small grants program, so we facilitate, we mobilize projects for ASEAN to be able to support small livelihood projects within the ASEAN, focusing on communities that are around protected areas. Okay. So these are some of the projects that we supported, including the use of the native dye for fabric. And I've seen that this is also being done here. We supported the one in Indonesia. But it's something, again, it's something that the ASEAN member states can really share their experience on. And then scientifically, we have the ASEAN Clearinghouse Mechanism. The ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is the house, is managing the ASEAN Clearinghouse, which is the data on biodiversity across ASEAN member states. And we also have the ACB Scientific Advisory Committee, which is composed of the scientists selected by the ASEAN member states to be part of, to be consulted for some of the programs that the ACB pursues. And aside from the Scientific Advisory Committee, as part of the ASEAN Scientific Advisory Committee, we are also, we also have this list of biodiversity experts in ASEAN. And we have been taking note of the presentations for the last 2 days, and we hope some of the scientists who are here can be part of that list of biodiversity experts in the region. This list actually eventually will be adopted, will be approved by the ASEAN senior officials for the environment, and will become part of our database, so that for certain thematic cooperation, then we will be able to easily, hopefully, call on these experts to support some of our initiatives on biodiversity and related areas. Okay, we also have projects. We also support scientific research. This taxonomic capacity training manual on taxonomy, we need to be able to understand what we have. As of now, these are just on plants, but hopefully we will be able to include fungus and microbes and insects as well as we move forward in supporting these research activities that we have. So some academic institutions may request support from the ACB, and we try to see how we can exchange information and mobilize resources to be able to focus on some relevant projects that is in line with our international cooperation and commitments. Okay. There are also community-based biodiversity projects that we undertake. So we support, if requested by by the ASEAN member states and by the communities. So, and then we did an interconnectivity study together with the Pew Foundation, and this is a very interesting data that we were able to get through modeling, that some of the particles, we have an exchange of particles in the ASEAN marine areas, and so we know that on certain times of the year, we have some particles from Thailand go to the Philippines, to Malaysia, Indonesia, and some certain times of the year, the particles go to Thailand. So there's interconnectivity when it comes to larvae and particle dispersal, and this information, I think we can move it further. Okay, then One Health. We have mainstreaming in health and agriculture. And then this one is very important. We just signed an agreement with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. And so we are now trying to move our research into something that can be useful for the business sector and eventually provide more economic returns, and then also support the businesses to be more responsible to the environment, and then also contribute to zero emission. We're also right now looking at not just carbon credits, but biodiversity credits as well. So that's another long topic for me to discuss. But yeah, so we have partners to implement our programs. It is not enough for the ACB to do it alone. We work with the ASEAN member states and all of these partners, which include the private sector. And then we have the post-2025 vision coming up, and we want to see that some of these initiatives will be taken into account as we prepare the post-2025 vision for the region. And so, just to emphasize that our mountains, our terrestrial areas, our coastal areas, our mangroves, marine areas are all interconnected. So it's important, really, collaboration is important for the region. And as we move from this year's theme, This year's theme is ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth of Indonesia. Next year, it will have a focus on connectivity, enhancing connectivity and resiliency. So I think this is very timely. This conference has been very timely because this will now, whatever we have learned from this conference, and hopefully we'll, and the network that we have established now, I think will be very useful as we move towards 2024 to enhance connectivity and resiliency in the ASEAN region and beyond. Thank you very much. Hashtag We Are ASEAN Biodiversity.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Theresa Mundita Lim, for updating us on the current status of biodiversity in the region, as well as all the tools and the platforms that could be used through the ASEAN